flying prices to the moon. The beers them waiting for the crash coming real soon. But the OG consultant watching, he's seen it all before. Over 40 years in the game, he knows the real score. Bull versus bear, a real estate fight. Peter Zalewski tell you who's wrong and who is right. In the Miami Condo investing club with no guess. He cuts through the noise and all of the mess. The Peter Zalewski Show. Big respect, OG in the game. Listen and learn the man's name. And up down. Peter Zalewski Show.
Happy Wednesday, Miami. This is Peter Zalewski. I am a condo consultant. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Check out my website, miamicondo.club. Tell me you don't love that music. That music, by the way, was actually created by a buddy of mine who set up an AI music company. So anybody out there who's looking to have their own music created that in which there's no copyright issues related to it, I'd encourage you to reach out to John Mora. He's got a company called buildreach.com. So thank you, John. Thank you for that song. Absolutely love that song. No better way to go into a podcast than with some lively music that really sort of reflects the diversity of what is South Florida. So you're watching the Peter Zalewski Show. This is our second episode. This is a show that I've envisioned for 25 years or so. Finally, the technology permits me to do it. I don't have to go into a studio. I don't have to deal with all of the different producers. I can basically just open up an app, record it, and then process it. Going forward, we're going to try to be doing these things live. Shows are always done on Wednesday at 4 p.m. So if you are driving home or you're on the train, just know if it's 4 o'clock Miami time on a Wednesday, you could know. You can go to any social media in which my name is, Peter Zalewski, or you can simply go to miamicondo.club and you will see a live broadcast of the show. We're going to give you conversations and discussions and overviews about what's going on with some of the most interesting and significant business leaders and power brokers in the South Florida area that maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't heard of, but I can guarantee you this. There's going to be an interesting conversation that will help you to feel better connected to what really is that makes up South Florida as such a significant, special place for those people who like the diversity, for those people who love the dynamics of what this region represents. So that being said, who are we talking to this week? Well, I have an interview. I did an interview with a former Bloomberg real estate reporter. Her name is Oshrat Carmiel. She now has a publication called highestandbest.beehive.com, in which she's publishing a weekly newsletter. She's giving you all kinds of tidbits, typically meant to be a 5-minute read or so, where she'll give you a bunch of highlights about what's going on in the South Florida and increasingly the Florida real estate market. So I'd encourage you to go ahead, subscribe, and see what Oshrat has to say week in and week out, because she's somebody who was, she was writing about real estate for quite some time up in New York. And then what happened? She moved down to South Florida during the pandemic. She moved down in 2022. That was at the time. And let's get in our time machine. Let's go back. Pandemic hits in the beginning of 2000, and effectively March of 2000. Everybody's on lockdown. Everybody's afraid to get an Amazon package. You're afraid to touch it. You have to let it sit. You have to wash everything. You're wearing a mask everywhere. We're all kind of freaking out. Fast forward to 2021, you got the vaccine coming online. People are feeling a lot more confident. And then before you know it, by 2022, the state of Florida is one of those states that gets ahead of the curve. And they say you don't need to wear a mask. You can come down to Florida, especially to South Florida. If you want to twerk on a police car, come on down to Miami Beach. Get on that police car and twerk, twerk, twerk. Obviously, I'm being a little satirical, but that's what happened. And once that happened, a lot of people from the Northeast, New York especially, as well as those people from California, Silicon Valley, they all started showing up in Florida. When they headed to Florida, many of them ended up in the South Florida area, especially the Miami area. And just to sort of juice it even more, the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, he was taking out billboards in San Francisco telling people in Northern California, hey, what the hell are you doing in San Francisco? What are you doing up here, Silicon Valley area? Why don't you simply move down to Miami and you can enjoy all of the lifestyle in which we have, i.e. being the weather, the diversity, the proximity for international travel, whether you're going to the Caribbean, you're going to Latin America, you're going to Europe, and who knows, maybe even Asia. So increasingly, a lot of people came down here. The proposition was made that if you come from a place like San Francisco or New York, you move to Miami, it's probably going to be cheaper, and you can work from home. Do we all remember that work from home when you didn't have to go into the office and basically you could get online, you could do a Zoom call, and you were working from home and you didn't have to deal with the subway. You didn't have to deal with the traffic, and you didn't have to deal with the weather, especially if it was up north during the winter. So many people came down here, and what happened is they bid up the prices of real estate, especially condos. And those prices went up so significantly. We did a study and we found that condos from before the pandemic to last year, they had gone up 69% on average. That was the appreciation that occurred in less than 5 years. So we had rapid appreciation that was occurring. We had all kinds of pre-construction towers that were starting. Remember, if a condo developer wants to build a tower, what they do is they go out and they peddle it to would-be buyers. Once enough would-be buyers put down some cash, they make a commitment. The developer then is able to parlay that into a construction loan and start going vertical. So all that stuff happened. But then, oh, wait, other things happen. Companies like Amazon out on the West Coast, Google, JP Morgan up in New York, they started telling their employees, listen, we need you to come in the office 3 days a week. And then it was 4 days a week. And increasingly, we're hearing that some people are being required to go back in the office 5 days a week. So that condo you might have bought in South Florida when everybody was afraid, we didn't know what was going on during the pandemic, or maybe you came down here to twerk on a police car, that's all suddenly changed. And now we have people who have condos, and they're deciding, am I going to hold it? Am I going to rent it? Am I going to sell it? Am I going to change my job because my boss, maybe Jamie Dimon up in New York with JP Morgan, he wants me back in the office? What do I sort of do? And that's kind of where we find ourselves in this particular condo market. But my conversation today with Oshrat Carmiel, former Bloomberg reporter, real estate reporter, and who now runs, again, as I mentioned, she's got her own publication. It's called highestandbest.beehive.com. She's somebody who made the move down here. And our conversation is about, A, are you happy you came? B, the people you know who came down here during the pandemic, are they still here and are they going to stay here? And then C, what's going on in the overall real estate market from through the eyes of a former Bloomberg reporter. And if anybody doesn't know, Bloomberg is it's a financial news source. They do all kinds of information about the market, whether it be bond market or stocks or anything like that. But then they also write about all kinds of other things. They do it at a higher level. This is not going to be like picking up some magazine while you're waiting in the line over at the grocery store. No, this is really ahead of the curve type of market moving information. That's what she wrote about, and she's going to share some of that information with us here now today. So that being said, let's go ahead and let's get into our interview with Oshrat Carmiel of highestandbest.beehive.com. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And remember, every Wednesday, 4 o'clock, the Peter Zalewski Show, where we're going to introduce you to a whole variety of people maybe you met before and you haven't met before, but you're always going to have great stories. So I hope you enjoy the presentation, and we'll see you next week. As I was telling you, we're fortunate enough to have a veteran journalist on the Peter Zalewski Show this week. I want to invite Oshrat Carmiel, excuse me, yes. I got it right that time, Carmiel. Oshrat has got a very interesting story. As mentioned, she moved down here during the pandemic. So she's been here long enough to constitute being actually a local now. So we're going to talk to her about how's transition been, how many people that she met when she first moved down here are still here, and does she have any regrets, or is she excited about going forward? She's going to be telling us too about her newsletter. It's called Highest and Best. You can find it at highestandbest.beehive.com. I'll put it in the show notes. I'd encourage you to subscribe. I'd encourage you to check it out. So we're going to be talking about her newsletter. We're going to talk about some of the things she's seen as she's out there tracking all of the transactions that are going on in South Florida, and increasingly sometimes outside of the South Florida area across the state of Florida. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up in terms of what her expectations are as we go into the winter buying season, which will be kicking off in November. That's when the weather starts to change. The hurricane season effectively has come to an end, and we had the events going on. We have everybody in town, and we got a carnival-like atmosphere for a good 6 months or so. So I want to tap into Oshrat's understanding, her knowledge, and her connection to the Northeast, and maybe she can fill in some of the gaps that I'm lacking. So all that being said, Oshrat, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. I guess now, by your definition, I'm a native. I'm a native Floridian.
You are a native.
3 years, you become a native.
Yep. As I like to tell everybody, if you haven't heard this before, the way it works in my mind, the first year you come down, everything's exciting, it's new. Second year, you start to figure out, okay, am I going to get serious or am I going to continue to have fun? And by the third year, if you haven't gotten serious, chances are you're going home to rehab, and the people I hang out with, prison. So, Oshrat, you're still here. Congratulations.
We're still here. 3.5 years and going to be 4 in January. So.
Wow. So tell me, how has the transition been now that if you were remember back in high school, if you played a sport, you had a varsity letter. You'd have the varsity letter now. So what's the take? Walk us sort of through what prompted you to come down here. Tell us a little bit about where you sort of are living, whether or not that changed from the initial arrival versus where you are now, and then maybe some of the things that you expected and didn't expect about South Florida, which is a very interesting place.
Well, I could say that I'm from the New York. I'm from the New York area. I lived in the New York area, born and bred, been there most of my life. I think we always, like many New Yorkers, you spend some time in Florida, and you always have those weeks where you're like, what if we lived here? And then it just goes away when you get back, but because your life is there. And I think once the pandemic hit, we spent a little more time down here, and with everything, like my story is very similar to many other people, is that once you're remote, suddenly, what if we lived here? Actually, it doesn't sound like as much of a fantasy, because you actually can live here and be employed. Those are two things that become important, because always living here would have meant leaving your job. So we thought about it. We had kids. Suddenly being in warm weather and being in a nice place just made sense. So we really just kind of jumped and decided to try it. I think we live in Boca, which is a little bit more of a suburban area. And I think what we found was it was like you take everybody that you're not really moving alone when you're coming from New York. You just look around, and all your neighbors were kind of your neighbors in New York. We
Really?
came here, and I've met more New Yorkers. I've met more people from Long Island than I knew when I lived in Manhattan here in Boca.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was the interesting thing. I think that it was very easy to acclimate because everybody was new. You didn't have that situation where you move to a new town and you're the new person. Everybody was the new person up here. So it wasn't really hard to acclimate, because I think everybody, it was like just a whole room full of new kids. And I could tell you, I mean, so for us, it was pretty easy. I think when you have kids, you get planted in very quickly. Once you join team sports and you have a school, that's it. You have everything set. I would always be curious to find out if you moved here, say, without kids, and you sort of had to make friends on your own, as opposed to sort of plug into your kids' social life. But that worked out quite well. But one thing I can tell you with that has changed is that when we came here in 2022, it was New Yorkers. I would say Californians kind of came latter of 22, early 23. And I would say around 24 was the Midwest. I met a lot of people from Chicago and Minneapolis. It was like, that was I can always tell you by the waves of new people that I meet.
Yeah.
And then right now, I've never known so many people from Canada as I do right now. Canada, Toronto, particularly. So I guess I've really expanded my international horizons in Boca. But yeah, so I always can see the migration waves based on just like, what's on the soccer field. So who I meet on the soccer field. But yeah, that's
any surprises looking back? Like, you came into South Florida thinking, oh my gosh, we got palm trees. Everybody up north, when they moved to South Florida, oh my God, we're going to have palm trees every day. Whenever you see any kind of video, there's always palm trees in there. Any surprises? And do you still like palm trees? Do you even notice them anymore? Or is it just sort of blended with everything else?
I don't take them for granted. Not yet. I maybe give me a few more years. I don't take it for granted. I say this is you're catching me in a particularly great time for New Yorkers, because this is like, somebody the other week said, oh, it's the first day of fall. And I said, oh, is it? I didn't, and this was like a friend from New York. I'm like, oh yeah, September 21st used to be a date that really kind of resonated, and it really means nothing. It actually means the weather's getting better. I know I sound a little bit boosterish and Pollyanna, but I'm telling you, this is definitely, we're not over it yet. So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, not over it yet. I mean, you actually can tell your kids to just go outside and come back later, because they can. It's warm outside. So no, don't take that for granted. Trying to think in terms of other things. I think I was surprised by the aggressiveness of drivers in this area. That really shocked me. We were in California over the summer briefly, and I think my husband and I were commenting like, "Oh, the drivers here are so nice," and we realized how absurd that sounded. But yeah, I think the weirdly aggressive or passive aggressive driving has actually been the biggest surprise. Getting cut off by like somebody whose license plate says smooth jazz. Like, it was just
yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But I think for the most part, I mean, not everything always goes back to real estate. I think when we moved here in 22, we always say, "Oh, I wish we moved here in 2019." The real estate prices were different. Now I actually feel like 22 seems like a pretty good investment decision, because I think if you're moving here now with interest rates being what they are and housing prices, yes, they're not climbing like they were back then, but they're still high, and you still have relatively high interest rates. So we feel like very smart, with our sub 3 rate. So we feel very very accomplished and smart, even though that was just good luck. So
Well done. Well done. Now, when you first moved to South Florida, you came in 2022, and you say you're in Boca now. Did you stay in Boca? Did you have any kind of transition in between? And what about your decision to come to Boca? Did you make the right decision buying in Boca, or because your interest rate is what it is, you simply can't go somewhere else? Can you kind of walk us through that as a transplant or somebody who's relocated here in the last 4 years?
yeah, we lived in Manhattan, so we were urban dwellers, with 3 children in a small Manhattan apartment. So for us, suburbs was always a dream. I think most people dream of the city, and I think for us, we never wanted to commute in, so we always wanted a suburban home. So for us, suburbs was sort of the what we wanted. So I don't think there was a regret there. I think we ended up in Boca because quite frankly, a lot of our friends from New York were already here. So really, it was just like moving to a neighborhood where you already knew people. It really does feel, probably of all the 3 counties, I think this part of Palm Beach County definitely feels, not that we were looking to replicate New York, but you pretty much just knew a lot of people here. No, we came here, we rented at first. We rented for a year. And I could definitely tell you that the rental market when we moved here was insane. It was like Manhattan all over again. You're trying to find something in a house in 2022 would get off the market very quickly. And our only goal at that point was we just want to pay less rent than in Manhattan, which shouldn't be a very hard goal,
Right.
But things were really flying, and now you see a difference. I mean, I look at the house actually that we rented when we first moved here, and it's sitting a bit, when we moved here, it's it's sitting on the rental market. So when we moved here, it was hard to find a rental, and you really needed to move fast, because I think the home prices were climbing so much that people were renting at first. So I'm seeing that, again, you see all this shifts just from your experience and how it's changed. I see even in my neighborhood, there's homes for sale. I wouldn't say the market is like this, just super slow down, but I'm definitely seeing homes that are like mine that are definitely on the market for longer. Prices that, again, 2022, there were homes that were exactly like mine selling for outrageous, or 2024 after we bought, for prices that you're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, right.
And you're like, wow, on paper, holy, if we sold right now, this would be amazing. And so now you're seeing prices, at least, homes priced at the far less prices and still sitting a little bit. So I think if you are a New Yorker or looking to come down, it's probably a much better buying opportunity than it was in 23 or late 22. So yeah, I can definitely see that change just through my own lens.
Now, what about the people you met when you first got down here? You met them. You said it was almost like, I would compare it to going to college. It's like freshman year in college. Everybody's new. They're all open and welcoming and trying to figure it all out. So where are we as you're coming through to graduation? Let's just say, a lot of people still here. Did they move? Did they maybe relocate in South Florida? Boca wasn't right for them. What can you give us any insight into that?
Most everybody I have met, or here, I would say, who came from elsewhere, is still here, all but one. I knew one person because, I think at the time when I moved here, I had just left Bloomberg. I was freelancing for other publications, and every place that I was writing for, this was 22, 23, said, we want to do the story about the people who are not staying, who are going back, who hate it. And I was like, sure, I'll do that story. And you're like, I couldn't do it because I trying to find people who, and I know one person who moved back to LA. It was for family reasons specifically, or just didn't click. It was just not the right vibe. But other than that, everybody has stayed. And I've actually been surprised by, we just had friends of ours from New York, longtime friends who just moved here now, about 2 months ago. And we have one more, I think we're down to, I don't think I know anybody left in Manhattan. We're down to one or two friends who are actually, we have friends who just bought a condo in Miami, who they're going to be empty nesters in 18 months. And they bought it now